This is Tech Unmuted, the podcast of modern collaboration, where we tell the stories of how collaboration tools enable businesses to be more efficient and connected. With your hosts, George Shainstein and Santi Cuellar. Welcome to Tech Unmuted.
Welcome to the latest episode of Tech Unmuted. Today, we're going to take a look at the top 5 Microsoft 365 collaboration hacks.
Yes, I like hacks.
Yeah, for sure. Right. And these are things we thought through that'll make it easier for you to collaborate, obviously, but also it's going to increase your productivity, both individually and as a team. So we're going to do a countdown from 5 to 1. And we've got a little bonus one at the end that we're going to talk about a little bit as well. So number 5 is lights, camera, action. So Sante, you want to hit on that one a little bit?
You know, absolutely. In this world we live in now where we have hybrid and remote and all sorts of work styles, you should strive to have your camera on. Cameras on in a meeting are critical. They're critical because you want to be able to connect with your colleagues who, well, you're not in an office setting anymore. And you want to be able to build those relationships and build that culture. So I understand that not everybody likes cameras, but I think cameras on are a way to go.
And you think about where we're at today, right? What if this were 25 years ago and COVID happened?
Right.
We would all be back in the office. So this hybrid model wouldn't have existed with conference calls. It's clearly with collaborative documents, everything we talk about, that has changed today with 365. We just literally would not have been able to do it 25 years ago, even really 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And you'll hear it in a couple of the other things we'll hit on today. But
listen, I know not everybody likes cameras. People are camera shy. But that's why we also have avatars. I think the purpose of the video and the avatar is so that there is a representation of you in the meeting. Right.
Yep.
And so yeah, I'm all for it.
So let's go to number 4. What's in a name? So, and I'll hit on this one first and you can chime in, Sante. So when you're sharing documents, you're creating documents, it's really critical to actually name them something that, one, if you're sending it, that the person knows what it is intuitively if it's sitting in their
Correct.
list of documents, and 2, that it's got some kind of date or timestamp. So
Correct.
We don't have a standard, right? We should probably talk about it as a team and get to a standard, but my standard approach is year, so like 2023, month, June, some descriptive thing of what's in that file. And if it's critical to a specific point in time, I'll put the actual date. So month, day, year, then at the end of it, so that there's some anchor. But it makes it a lot easier to go back and search and find it, or search shared documents or whatever else. But Sante, you want to?
Well, I had a question. So that format that you use, which I know you use that, the date format at the front of the naming convention for your file, does that help you find your file?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
A lot of times I'll know the anchor, right? Hey, I did something last year. It was 2023.
I see.
Or sorry, it was 2022, or it was 2022 and maybe it was April or May. So I'll search April, May. And then sometimes I'll filter down by, I know it was PowerPoint. So that still could be a lot of documents, right? But it does make it a lot easier to sort of drill down and then find it. And the useful part of it as well is in the sharing piece, where it's somewhere else with another person, because a lot of times I know I've pinged you and said, I know I shared a document to you like a year ago and I can't find it. And a lot of times you'll come back and go, oh, yeah, I know where it is. I had it pinned or something, right?
Yeah. I don't have a standard format. I believe a lot in creating a structured folder system based on the topic at hand or the project at hand. And so I tend to just find the folder and not so much the file. But I think having a standard naming convention that's universal across a team, yeah, I can see the value in that. And I think that's something that we could get better at for sure.
Yeah, we've got to definitely spend a little time on that. So number 3, and this sort of has a collection of things underneath it, but use planner, not paper, right? So planner is, maybe we'll do an episode just on this in the future. Not a lot of people use planner, right? It's a feature within a team within Microsoft Teams that's project management like. It's got cards where you can store elements of the project, data related to that, attach files, that kind of stuff, and obviously assign resources. Otherwise, it wouldn't manage project. But there's a lot of other elements, right, that are beyond planner. You want to hit on some of those, Sante?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, I know for a fact that there's still folks like, I need to create a calendar. And so what do? They go open up a PowerPoint and they grab the template that comes from Microsoft that gives you a calendar. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense these days. You have calendars in SharePoint, for example. You have calendars now in this new Microsoft Loop environment. We can actually have shareable calendars that can be edited live, right? So
that was the bonus feature Sante just mentioned, Microsoft Loop. That we're gonna record that episode tomorrow.
Yes, that's going to be the next episode, and I'm excited about it because I absolutely love Loop. But yeah, you have these technologies at your fingertips now, and there's no need to go back to, honestly, it's to some degree archaic ways. We're past that. So yeah, don't use paper. Don't print stuff out. Don't use PowerPoint, which is really meant to present, not to create a calendar. Use the right tools and become that much more effective, right? I'm all for that.
Yep. So we're going to go to number 2. We debated whether this is number 2 or number 1. That's one of my pet peeves, but sharing is caring, right? So
yes.
This is share a doc, right? Don't attach a file and send it around, and then you have version 2 and version 3 and version 4, right? And it's share it as editable, right? That's the key.
Correct.
Some systems are set up 365 so that by default the shared document is editable. Others, like our environment, are not.
Right.
But make sure if it's not, that you do it as editable. And oftentimes people get concerned. Hey, I have this document. I used to use version names. I don't use it. What if I delete something and I need that thing that I deleted, right? You just go into your OneDrive folder, and you look for versions, right? And you go back and you restore a version, and it doesn't restore that version for everybody.
Correct.
It just gives you the ability to open one of the previous versions, pull out what you need, drop it back into the deck, into the Word doc, whatever it is, right? And you've got a history then of what happened in the doc that you would have never had before, because you never saved the versions correctly, right, or anything.
Right.
But that's
I will tell you something. Not only should you share and not attach, but when somebody shares something with you, please do not take that file and save it as something else. There's no need for that. So I'm going to save it as my version. No, just make your changes in the link that was shared with you, right? And call it a day. Because all you've created now is you've broken the chain. Now you've created a completely separate document that has changes that nobody understands what you did, and somebody has to try and merge those into the live document. That doesn't make any sense. That's the whole purpose of co-authoring with Microsoft 365.
So now to number 1. Number 1 is that email could have been a chat. And there's multiple derivations of this, but think about when you're sending emails out. So what often happens is, starts out, Sante and I send an email to each other, and then somebody else gets added to the email, and somebody else, and somebody else, and somebody else. And then you're saying to people, hey, look down 4 emails to see what
Yeah.
that latest topic of was, and or the thing the points I made. People are scrolling down through the headers on every email and the footers to get to it, right? So if you did this in a chat, uh, everything's in the chat. You can add somebody and give them the full history.
That's
Any
right.
documents that are attached to the chat are available to them. There's no headers or footers, so they can scroll back through much more easily and see where it started and where it ended up, right? And we had one internally that happened about a year ago. We pulled a bunch of people in, and some people who had been actively using 365 and others who hadn't. And we ended up with 20 people in that chat for a fairly time sensitive project that we were working on with a lot of senior folks in the company.
Sure.
And it was the first time I think that everybody really leaned in and saw the power, right? Everybody was working in shared docs, which hadn't really happened before. There was a single document that we eventually needed to get to. Everybody was working and reviewing the same document, and all of the conversation was in chat and Teams.
I go back to my Vegas trip to the Microsoft 365 conference where they asked me and they stumped me, how many still create calendar invites in Outlook instead of Teams? Of course,
Yep.
we all raised our hand. You see, what we're witnessing is a transformational shift in how we conduct business. And everything we mentioned here today is really about two things. First of all, changing the way you think about how you conduct business.
Yep.
In other words, you have to realize that the way you did things 5 years ago isn't how we do it today.
Yep.
So there has to be a shift in that sense. And then two, there has to be a cultural shift in where we start to embrace these technologies at the corporate level, right? So it's corporate culture, right? So that we can leverage these tools and be more effective. I know you wanted to say the nugget, which was Loop. Listen, Loop is an amazing platform. It's brand new, right? It's in preview mode. It's in public preview mode right now. We are going to do a little deeper dive in the next podcast on Loop, but Loop is one of those platforms that I think is going to force that change.
Yep.
Both at the corporate level, both at the individual mindset level, because it really does. You have no choice but to think differently when you're working in a Loop. But Loop is basically, for those who haven't heard about Microsoft Loop, it is Microsoft's new online collaboration platform. It is where you can go and plan and collaborate and approve and track things within your team. And we'll get into that in the next podcast. But these are the technologies and the changes that are happening. They're happening really fast. And what we've shared with you today is really just, honestly, it's best practices, right? Best practices or hacks on how to leverage these tools. And listen, you said it best, George. You have to be a pioneer, right?
Yep.
You can't fight the machine. You have to be a pioneer, right?
And it's a combination, right? It's a combination of, you'd mentioned it, that corporate culture, that team culture. Are we gonna do the new things and try to get more productive, or are we gonna sit around and wait for it to happen? And if you sit around and wait for it to happen, you won't get the productivity increase, right? Somebody else will, or some other team will, or whatever. And it goes down to video as well. I mean, some organizations explicitly say you don't have to be on video, right? And our culture internally here is everybody should be on video, right?
Correct.
Our team uses 95% of the time everybody's on video. Sometimes we had a call earlier today, a couple of folks are on avatars. It's perfectly fine, right?
Perfectly fine.
But it makes the interaction feel more like you're actually in the office. So again, next podcast we're going to talk about Loop. There's a lot of elements to it, and we'll work through sort of a demo environment where you can see some things that we've done and the way you can interact. But it's really cool. We will start to break that down on the next one, and we may go a little deeper even beyond that, because we feel like this is going to supplant a number of things that are going on with teams today.
Absolutely, or a number of processes anyway. But folks, here we are. We are at the end of our podcast. We want to thank you all for joining today. Those are your 5 productivity hacks. I hope you jotted them down on a piece of paper. No, don't do that. Don't do that. But thank you for joining. If you want the show notes, you can find those at fusionconnect.com/techunmuted. You'll have more details on what we spoke about here in this podcast today. And please, please don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you don't miss an episode. But until next time, stay connected.
Visit fusionconnect.com/techunmuted for show notes and more episodes. Thanks for listening.